Hi guys, and welcome back. A couple of months ago I tried a unique DAC combo that could completely change the voicing of your headphones through custom parametric EQ options and also sound enhancements built inside the unit. With over 2500 headphone presets available, you could make your headphones from good to freaking awesome in just a matter of seconds. Today, however, I'll try the newest member of the Luxsin family called the X8, which is not only more affordable at $699 or euros, but also way more feature-packed, and let's discuss about that. While the price went down from $1099 on the X9 to $699 on the X8, the amazing build quality remained unchanged, and when I say amazing, I truly mean that. Once again, we have a fully CNC machined aluminum unit that leaves a stunning first impression. The front panel seems quite thick, especially at the bottom, and the metal feet have wide rubber inlays for vibration control. You can see plenty of air vents on the lateral heatsinks that will move hot air outside its case. The 4-inch HD touchscreen is still present, that lets you control the unit. It's still tilted 15 degrees, so you can clearly see its UI even in its close vicinity. Although it doesn't occupy lots of desktop space, it weighs 3 kilos or around 6 pounds, suggesting that we're dealing with an overpopulated PCB and maybe with a linear transformer. Once again, 3 headphone jacks are being offered, out of which 2 are balanced outputs. On its back we get pretty much every digital input except for AC and BNC. We even get an I2S input via an HDMI connector, which I'll use together with my CD/Super Audio CD transport. A pair of RCA and XLR outputs are also present, outputting up to 4.2 volts via XLR. The only difference I see on the X8 versus the X9 is that we have that I2S connection as opposed to HDMI ARC and eARC on the X9, meaning that X8 is geared mostly towards headphones and stereo heads as opposed to cinephiles on the X9. Under its hood, this is honestly a very powerful machine, and I never thought that so much technology can fit inside into such a small chassis. For example, we have right now 8 actual physical DAC chips as opposed to 1 or maybe 2 DAC chips, and those are flagship Cirrus Logic DAC chips, which is actually pretty interesting because this is the very first DAC I'm testing that works in an octo mono operation. The DAC's output stage is based on a couple of OPA 1612 op-amps. The big modules you see right now are headphone amplifier modules that contain a few TPA 6120 chips that work as current buffers. While the pricier X9 delivered up to 3 watts of power per channel, the more affordable X8 now delivers up to 4.8 watts per channel. So yes, this is more affordable but also more powerful at the same time. And I'm pretty sure that this time around I'll be able to drive more headphones, but more about that in a second. In the middle of the PCB you can see most of the digital section, a CPU, a huge DSP core, including the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth receiver chips, and on the right you can see a pretty beefy power supply implementation. There's a custom linear transformer, a couple of voltage regulators, then a beefy filtering stage follows. I see only high quality components all around, for example Nikon capacitors, V-Reds, V-shaped resistors, a couple of Omron analog relays for a perfect channel balance, and overall it looks pretty impressive on the inside. Its UI is quite straightforward and intuitive. A simple swipe to the right will reveal the user menu where you can select the input, the output, play around with the audio settings like the headphone gain, digital filters, dynamic range enhancement, preamp volume pass-through and whatnot. We even get 8 I2S modes, which is always a good thing since I2S wasn't standardized yet. You can connect it to internet via Wi-Fi, and even update its firmware over the air. Plus we get a few general settings that lets you adjust the brightness of the screen and of the volume knob. A swipe to the left, however, unlocks the full potential of the X8. After enabling the effects tab, you can increase the stereo width, and yes, the Soundstage is increasing not only via XLR or RCA outputs, but also via headphone outputs as well. There's a music style option that works as an equalizer. You can adjust the tone of the bass, of the mid-range and treble, make some of that fuller or softer, and of course you can change the loudness threshold as well. The next tab is called Crossfade, and if you are using headphones with older recordings that use extreme stereo effects, then you can play around with the crossfade and make them sound narrower and less fatiguing, mimicking the sound of stereo speakers. Perhaps the most exciting thing is that you can enable HPAQ and select your pair of headphones from a list of around 2500 headphones. Usually I don't use EQ and leave everything on flat, but in this case the change was substantial and quite transformative with some of the headphones I have around that sounded much livelier and more enjoyable. For example, I can have more bass thump with the Susvara OG or Susvara Unveiled, more mid-range richness and less treble edge with the T+A Solitaire P, and this feature has grown on me ever since. This headphone list is being updated on a monthly basis, so you can be sure that most hi-fi headphones will be there in no time. You can also bypass all of these effects and EQ options and get the cleanest possible signal, especially when using it as a standalone DAC that you want as detailed and as pure sounding as possible. Last but not least, the default standby screen can show you a digital view meter, which many will find pleasing to look at. You have 15 different options to choose from. There's even a theme that shows how much voltage and amperage the unit is drawing. It even shows the internal temperature of the headphone amplifier modules, of the linear transformer, and also of the main voltage regulators placed under a heatsink. You can also control everything with the Luxsin controller app found on Google Play Store and also iOS Store. Absolutely every feature found on its user menu is now controllable with your smartphone. You can select the input, the output, you can engage the FX tab and even HPAQ option, and you can change the volume, the left and right balance, and any other general or audio settings you can think of is also in there. You can adjust the brightness of the knob of the screen and change the view meters. Now here is the fun part. Once you engage the HPAQ option, then you'll see an AI bubble hovering, and once you tap on it, you'll have a personal assistant that can make custom adjustments to the sound according to your needs. Want more bass in your Susvara Unveiled? Just ask for a bass head preset. Want your Susvara to sound more like a pair of Sennheiser HD 800S? Just ask the assistant and the tonal balance will shift accordingly. Want your Skullcandy Skull Crashers to sound like a pair of $8,000 Hi-Fi Susvara Unveiled? Just ask the personal assistant. But there's a catch. The Skull Crashers will never sound like a pair of Hi-Fi Susvara Unveiled because there are plenty of limitations. The transit response, resolution and soundstage can't change. That is mostly dependent on the headphone that you are using, on its closed back or open back design, on the thinness of the diaphragm, on the magnet arrangement, and on the driver quality in general. But it's still fun playing with that AI assistant and asking some silly questions, trying to replicate the sound of a $1 million hi-fi system or maybe the soundstage of the Grand Hall in Vienna. That is really not possible, but you can try. Now let's discuss its sound, but with all of the sound enhancements turned off in a stereo setup, because once you engage those sound enhancements, EQ presets, tone controls, there might be two X8 sitting on your table and sounding completely different. So I wanted to know how it sounds, its tonality with everything turned off, so that's why I used it in my stereo setup, only as a DAC only device. I used my XST20 CD/Super Audio CD transport from Onyx Hi-Fi and followed by this guy and also by my preamp, two monoblock amplifiers and the loudspeakers that you can see behind me. And right off the bat, I observed that it does something to the Soundstage. I realized that the Soundstage and 3D effects this guy offers can easily match and even outperform the soundstaging of R2R ladder DACs. Instead of collapsing the notes on top of each other like many affordable DACs are doing nowadays, this one started to decompress the music and put every note in its own bubble of air. Its bigger brother, the X9, is more expensive, but I feel it might lose some market share because it's smaller and more affordable brother. It's bigger sounding on all X, Y, and Z axles. I just got a new preamp and I'm still accommodating to its sound, the Chord Ultima Pre, and I'm pretty sure that it also improved the Soundstage quite a lot. But let's not forget that most of the heavy lifting is done by the X8 alone, that somehow unshackles the sound and lets it roam through the room. Even right now, I can say that the Luxsin X8 is more holographic and more 3D sounding compared to a tapping D900, compared to a LAiV Crescendo verse, but it's not really on the same level with something like an Eversolo DAC Z10 that is further decompressing the sound. The second part, which I liked quite a lot about the X8, is that it was easily pushing lots of information forward, but without making me lowering the volume with some treble intensive tracks. Now, if I go down the memory lane and remember all of the Cirrus Logic based DACs that I have tried up until now, I remember a couple of tapping units, I remember a few dongles, but I couldn't describe all of those resolving or super impressive sounding on the micro scale, super revealing. But this is different. We have 8 actual DAC chips. I never tested a DAC with 8 DAC chips. This is a new novelty to me. And if you check the datasheet of this Cirrus Logic DAC chip, then you'll observe that once you use multiple chips in mono mode, in this case octo mono mode, then dynamic range goes up by around 9 dB in this case. And that's exactly what Luxsin Audio did. It's like having an 8-core CPU doing the same tasks versus a single-core CPU. And of course the results might vary depending on the implementation, but it's clear that dynamic range improves considerably once you use multiple DAC chips like we have right now on the X8. The interesting part is that we have a higher dynamic range on the X8 versus the X9, which is costlier, and also a lower channel crosstalk. So in very simple terms, the X8 is more detailed on the micro scale. There is simply more information pushed forward, and also the soundstage and 3D effects and holography are also better on the X8 compared to its bigger brother X9. Last but not least, the tone and timbre of the X8 is really what conquered my heart in the first place. And I know it's kind of silly and stupid comparing DAC chips, because that's really 10% of the final sound that you are getting from the final product. It's like comparing Pirelli and Michelin tires on a hypercar. Yes, they make a difference, but the difference is not so big. But still, I need to mention that from all of the DAC chips that I tried in so many devices, the most natural and organic ones that are much closer to R2R ladder DACs are Cirrus Logic DAC chips. On the second place, I would place those Wolfson DACs. Sadly, Wolfson is no longer developing new DAC chips for a while now. And on the third place, I would put the AKM DAC chips, which are still natural and organic, but not on the same level with the Wolfson and Cirrus Logic DAC chips. Again, this is a silly comparison because most of these devices have different components, different software. All of that influences the sound in a very big way. But still, from the ones that I tried, I believe that Cirrus Logic DACs are closer, much closer to R2R ladder DACs that I tried up to this point. The Luxsin X8 is therefore not piercing my eardrums with some powerful trebles. I do not find it dry or thin sounding in the mid-range, and it's definitely not shy sounding in the bass. In fact, treble intensive tracks worked outstanding on the X8, such as rock and metal. I could use that for hours and hours and that wouldn't be a problem. Listening fatigue never settled in, which is great not only for hardcore audiophiles but for gamers as well. Unsurprisingly, the headphone amplifier section of the X8 is a little bit more impressive than that of the X9. We have more power on top and therefore I can drive some additional headphones. The interesting part is that I liked the headphone amplifier on the X9 mostly with that HP EQ option enabled that made my headphones a bit livelier, a bit more punchier sounding. For example, the Headphone Were Unveiled was quite transformative, but in the case of the X8 that is no longer necessary. So I believe it sounds just fine even in the flat setting without any kind of sound enhancement enabled, which is actually great because sometimes I want to review a pair of headphones and I want to hear the truth. I don't want to beautify the sound in any way. The somewhat flat sound of the X9 luckily didn't move into the X8. It's slightly different and you can feel right away that there is simply more dynamic range on the X8. You can sense that there is a higher range between the lowest intensity bass note and also the highest intensity treble note. There is more space and therefore the bass is livelier and there is a little bit more information at the very top. So that you can hear via headphones pretty easily. While I'm not discussing a fully discrete headphone amplifier biased into full class operation, those are usually quite expensive, I still felt a pretty good drive with this one and also a very good control of the drivers, especially of planar headphones. And perhaps the biggest change versus the X9 is that I can finally use super hard to drive headphones such as HiFiMan HE6 or Susvara and still have around 10, maybe 12 dB of volume left on top, which wasn't there on the X9. The power increase is quite evident and I no longer need to crank the volume so high with most of my headphones or move to medium gain, high gain, low gain was just fine with most of my headphones. And it's hard to admit it, but it fully drove my entire headphone collection. Yes, including both HiFiMan Susvara models, and I still had plenty of volume left. The only comparison that you guys asked me to do is to pit the X8 versus the LAiV Crescendo verse, which I liked more as a music lover and a little bit less as an audiophile. Now, if you are using power amplifiers and not integrated amplifiers, then the LAiV Crescendo verse is a better unit because it does have an active preamplifier stage and that works absolutely wonderful with power amplifiers. The X8 doesn't have a line amplifier stage, it has a very simple volume control, that's actually a digital attenuator. We have a couple of relays for a perfect channel balance, but in truth we don't have an active preamp stage, so it's not working that great with power amplifiers. You will need a dedicated preamplifier with the X8. But if you are using integrated amplifiers, then I believe that the difference is no longer so big. I believe they are more or less the same, and of course there are some differences which I'll mention in a second. The Crescendo verse will impress you with a somewhat bolder bass delivery and with a sweeter and richer mid-range delivery, while the X8 will impress you with a nicer detail retrieval, showing some additional nuances on the micro scale and also with maybe a 10% improvement in terms of, soundstage, 3D effects, sounding ever so slightly bigger on all axes. Moving on to headphones, we again have two different presentations. We have a lot more power on the X8, so you can go much louder, you can go like 105, maybe 110 dB with something like HiFiMan Susvara, which you cannot do on the LAiV Crescendo verse, but I do believe we get higher quality power on the LAiV Crescendo verse because that headphone amplifier is made only from discrete components. So I'd say that we get a somewhat tighter sound on the X8, but a smoother, more relaxed and more effortless sound on the LAiV Crescendo verse via headphones. Dynamic range, however, is more impressive on the X8, especially with harder to drive headphones like Headphone Soundware, for example. There's simply a much higher gap between the lowest intensity note and also the highest intensity note. You can hear the bass a little bit bolder and also the upper treble clearer, more defined. So if you care about that, the X8 is more impressive. In the end, I think we have two quite different sounding units. One is more technical, more resolving, faster, tighter and bigger sounding as well, which is the Luxsin X8. And the other one is more emotional, smoother, richer, having an ace under its sleeve, especially when working as a DAC and preamp. While a music lover might choose the Crescendo verse, please do not forget how many features the X8 is offering to you, and with the right settings, this one might sound more similar than different to the Crescendo verse. So both of them are great, but the feature set on the X8 is just on another level. Wrapping up, I don't remember ever testing such a feature-packed unit at less than $1,000. And the inclusion of a touchscreen, web interface and app support is so relevant in 2026, and I believe these features will bring a younger demographic to this hobby, and this part alone makes me quite happy because I'm getting older. When you have so many distractions nowadays, it's really hard bringing new people into this hobby, but I feel that's much easier with the X8. It doesn't cost you an arm and a leg. I find it exemplary in terms of resolution and also soundstage. And let's not forget its amazing tone and timbre that mimics the sound of R2R ladder DACs. Last but not least, it fully drives my entire headphone collection, and I can save a ton of presets on its internal memory and choose the right one for my headphones. I still cannot make my Skull Crushers sound like Headphone Soundware Unveiled, but I will accept such a compromise. This is a highly impressive unit that deserved my highly impressive award, and I'll have a watchful eye on the Luxsin Audio as a brand because, frankly, these guys do what others don't. Thanks as always for watching, everyone. Please consider liking, disliking, maybe subscribing if you found this video helpful, and I'll see you very, very soon. Keep rocking, everyone.